The one thing that's cool with designers is though, if you have a napkin and a pen, we're at a bar, it looked like this. They could pretty much kind of draw what it looked like. No way, it's like, really? Yeah, we were trying to do that. Okay, so my name is Jon Ikeda. Currently, I am at Honda Racing Corporation, running the business division, but I have a long history in Honda. I'm on my 36th year, man, 36 years, but 25 of that was designing cars. And I had an opportunity to learn design in Japan for 6 years. My first 6 years was in Japan. And then I came back here to the States at Torrance, in the facility you're here. I would still say that, well, I don't know. I think more of a creative guy. I'm not an Excel sheet crunching numbers, monthly sales, daily things like that. It's hard for me to work the left side of the brain as much. I could tell you if I'm sitting in a meeting, I'm still doodling. It's just a way for me to concentrate. So most of the time I walk away and a lot of guys, could I have your doodles? Whatever, yeah, whatever, but it just who I am, yeah. I think, you've hit all of the value points, the logical viewpoint, meaning, yeah, let's test some ideas, get it out in front of the market, see what people react to it and what they say. We can get some data points and whatnot. The other is you want to try something new as a designer and you're still years out, and if things are well received, it gives the engineer time to kind of work on something that might possibly become something new for a vehicle and whatnot. Purely, from a designer guy perspective, and I know there's other design people that might see this, but for me, it's just a excuse for a lot more freedom because it is a one-off. And a hot rod might be a good representation, if you will, but you get to spend the time and just purely have the room to express something that's been on your mind that somebody's been telling you, you can't. Especially, when you're starting out, it's an amazing thing to be able to work on show cars and things. You can really express, your ideas and things, and it's a sense of freedom for designers. So there's different reasons behind it all, but selfishly, from a designer's perspective, it's a play day. Go out. I think you have to give the designers some freedom to express themselves, because out of that, and when we say freedom to express yourself, some of it just purely naivety, because a kid out of school or something might not know how to put a production vehicle together, right? But it is industrial design, so there are parameters and things you have to hold on to make a real vehicle out of it, but you don't have the constraints. And yet, being naive allows you to push limits that an experienced designer who's gone through several rounds already limit themselves, in a box. Oh, they can't do this, they can't do that, and you just slowly starts to hold back, So from a value perspective, from an OEM, they want the new ideas, right? And it's very important for each OEM to let the guys and gals loose a little bit from time to time to just see what they could come up with that's new. What I do see trending after the BEV world and the BEV push is the simplification of interior designs, right? Back when we were doing it, all the little meters and needles and everything had to be made physically and show that it's unique and it's fun and whatnot. From an interior design perspective, I thought that was something they had to do in my day. But recently, things are a lot more open and simple, and you have panels and screens, and a lot of the entertainment that occurs to get a driver engaged is digital. And it gives you the freedom to choose the color you want, or the meter that you want to see, and the size of the font you want. And all of that could be a lot more customized because of the technologies that are there in general. But the space itself has simplified. How a individual experiences themselves inside the car is so important now, right? It just is. And there's so many new tools. Like, I've been out too long. I see how presentations are done. It's completely different. Things are moving now in presentations. You got videos and things to give you a sense of feel of what it might look like driving down the street. We had to draw everything. We drew absolutely everything. Our Google download pre-internet was we'd spend hours at a bookstore looking through magazines for the right image so we could cut it out and put it on a poster board to make a concept board or something. So yeah, it's way more advanced, and I'm sure with the information that young designers could get these days, the solutions and things are way more unique and different for the time. How many times have I seen something online and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird or whatever, and then you see it, you go to Monterey Car Week or somewhere and you see it in the space that it needs to be at. It's like, wow, it's completely different than what I thought I saw, right? But the comments are running because so many people can't see the real concept car because it's one of one traveling around the world or whatever, and it doesn't make it to your town or whatever. So you're basically relying on images and things. But it's always amazing to me how, yeah, that's not what I thought. Once I saw it, and it could go the other way too. It looked amazing on the screen, but I don't know what happened. I don't like it in real life or whatever. It could go both ways, but yeah, it has. And it's a physical thing. It's a 3D thing. You gotta have something to show. You gotta have something to show. And Acura is one of those special brands that's regional. It's not a global brand, right? And so, keeping awareness and things alive, in North America is very important for the brand. And but to be able to do that on a global stage like, Monterey Car Week is always a fun place. It's a fun place for us to do, yeah. Cars used to be the utmost futuristic thing, right? So it's the closest thing to people trying to make almost like a humanoid robot. It's a machine, but it has soul. For car people like me, there's something there, right? Now there's a lot of other things that represent those kinds of things too. People like myself, who drives an Integra Type S manual, I'm a caveman, man. I'm so that guy, when I always talk about this with friends sometimes. It's like, you remember when cars came and people were told that, the days of the horses are over, right? And the guy on the horse used to say, well, there's no roads to get out there, and it can feed itself, and I take it to the river and it drinks, and we just keep going, right? But it didn't take long before the infrastructure allowed the car to be the best mobility device from going from A to B. And in that evolution, technology is always going to keep coming, and it's going to evolve mobility for everyone. I think a lot of cars are. I prefer my Integra Type S because of the size that it is. It makes me feel comfortable with what I grew up with, I guess, more than anything. Size-wise, there's a certain level of comfort that I have for size when I want to own a vehicle, right? Proportions, everything. Now, if you make it big wheel arches, and everybody goes, oh, the wheelbase. Well, the wheelbase is still long, but you're looking at wheelbase from the outside, from the inside of the rear and the inside of the front, and whatever body color you got left in between is visually your wheelbase, all right? So what happens? Well, that looks kind of stubby, so what do they want? I want the wheelbase to be higher, so these big wheels and tires can be further apart, so you get the length that you want. It's endless proportion games. This is why you have cars with belt lines that seem so high, or dashboards that the dash seems so high, and yet they look like they're chop tops, like the side glass is lower. It's because if you just did it regular, it would just look like a very tall car with a very small person in it. So you do the chop top look pretty much to make the car look lower and wider, right? To get the proportion of that low and wide working for you. And these are all the challenges that designers continually have to face, right? The curse of the show car to production is because you're not constrained, you make it as high as you want, you make it as wide as you want, you can do all kinds of things as you want, and it looks amazing. And then you got to meet the production regulations and things. And if you're too far off base and you can't meet the tricks that we were just talking about a little earlier to cover for that, then you might find yourself in big trouble, because you come out with a production version. It happens all the time. It's happened to us. It's happened to a lot of companies where show car's amazing. What does the production look like this? Well, we surpassed the limits of our or manufacturing capabilities or being able to, we could always make one, right? But when you're trying to sell a vehicle, you're gonna sell 50,000 of these a year. There's sheet metal stamping coming out and you got a certain amount of minutes that he has to go on a line and does this, and people have to work so diligently to put everything together so the line keeps moving. There's a lot of things you have to think about. Engineering, manufacturing, all of these that are good people in Ohio have to go through. In Indiana, all our factories have to go through. And every factory, every OEM has to go through. But yeah, you put all that in, and sometimes you just can't get it, right? Or sometimes somebody, the engineer goes, "Damn, I figured it out." You know, I remember working on the Gen 3 TL, and they were telling me, I just begged them. I said, "Look, if we're gonna make this car, I need a 235, 4517 as the tire." And I was laughed off the face of the map by experienced engineers, and they were saying, "It's gonna be a 215, 65, 15, John, or maybe we'll give you 60, 16s. And what are you talking about, 17-inch 45 series tires? Are you out of your mind?" It's built on an Acura platform, John, you know, and and it took one engineer to say, if I change this $3 knuckle piece on here, we could put those rims on, we could put those wheels on. And we were able to do it. But because of that passion to pursue that by this individual, it helped the car look more like the original concept, right? Otherwise, it would be very much more like the Accords of the time. If you're a car designer and you don't have thick skin, you're in the wrong business. Okay, you're absolutely in the wrong business, because making a vehicle, you're spending 5 to 6 years of your life, right? From the napkin sketch till somehow miraculously it's coming off of a production line. It's a lifetime, you know, of involvement, and the more passionate you are, the more involved you are, probably will end up being closer to what you wanted, you know? And in that context of things, it's like a kid, and then you make the kid, you love your kid, and somebody's saying your kid's not cool, you can see how personal it could get, right? And it can be for a lot of people, but that's part of design, you know? It's part of car design for sure.